Harvey's Hot Takes with our man Bryan Hayes. Each Wednesday, we ask Bryan Hayes, TSN Radio superstar, for 3 takes as hot as a Harvey's Original Burger. The entire crew had Harvey's Original Burgers for the Super Bowl, and they were delicious. Bryan, great to see you. We just saw Austin Matthews and William Nylander bail out the Leafs on Thursday night. We just heard from the insiders. They were talking about Brad Treliving still pursuing a defenseman. When you think of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the trade deadline, Bryan Hayes, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I'm probably in the minority on this, Jay, but my thought on this is the Leafs need to win or lose with this group this season. And what I mean by that is this is what they've built, right? They've done the heavy lifting, even in the summertime. I know it didn't work. It hasn't worked great with Tyler Bertuzzi, with Max Domi at times, but they are playoff performers. Those are guys you have to trust are going to elevate their game come playoff time. And I know there's an obsession in this market, in Toronto, and there always has been, this obsession with loading up at the trade deadline, being uber active in the offseason, constantly going for it, sign everybody, be in on everything. And it hasn't worked in the past, and I don't think it needs to be the case this time around. And again, I know Leaf fans are probably thinking, wait a minute, how do you not go all in with Matthews being as good as he is this year, Nylander being as good as he is this year? Well, you look at the 2 examples that got to a Cup final last year, and I think that's exactly what I'm talking about here. The Florida Panthers, Jay, last year at the deadline, literally did not make a trade. They literally did not make a move, and they were in the same spot last year that the Leafs are in this year. Very inconsistent, but they did some heavy lifting in the past, and they had to believe that the big boys would show up come playoff time, that their goaltender would stand on his head when need be come playoff time. And I think it's the same thing here with the Maple Leafs. Even Vegas last year before the deadline, they picked up Ivan Barbashev for a kid who's got 6 points in the American League right now in St. Louis. Not a lot of activity last year for Vegas. Not a lot of activity for Florida. It's time for Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Riley, whoever's going to play a net, Sheldon Keefe, to do the heavy lifting. Do not rely on trading prospects and picks. You can't keep doing it every year. First rounders out. Easton Cowan out, Fraser Mitten out. You need to build up this farm system again. Matthews is here for at least another 4 years after this. Nylander's here for at least another 8 years after this. It's not always about all in, and that's the only answer. The answer has to be in the room right now, and I think they're going to have a quiet trade deadline. I think they should. It doesn't mean you don't build around the edges, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, lower end prospects to bring in depth guys. Okay, I can deal with that. But first rounders and high-end picks for rentals, I don't think it's the right play.
You mentioned heavy lifting. Pitchers and catchers have reported to Dunedin. Very exciting. Blue Jays getting things going. And Alek Manoah has been doing some heavy lifting after a disastrous 2023. If you just go off Instagram, Bryan, he's in the best shape of his life. But in your opinion, we need to look a little more big picture, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And those filters on Instagram, I love them as much as Manoah does. But Manoah is the ultimate distraction for Ross Atkins in that Blue Jay front office right now, because all of Blue Jay fans and all the Blue Jays media, Jay, we're falling right into the trap, right? We are absolutely obsessed with how Manoah looks, how he feels, what he's going to say this week. Now the pitchers and catchers have reported John Schneider saying all the right things down in Dunedin, and it's distracting from what was an awful offseason, an incredibly deflating and disappointing offseason. So in a way, Manoah is actually being propped up, and I don't think he should be. He's got to earn his spot, and the Jays keep saying that's exactly where they stand right now, but there's this talk about the redemption, and it would be a great story. I'd love to see it. We all love the redemption story, and I'm pulling for Alek Manoah, but he's a depth piece at best. I don't believe he's even penciled into the rotation, yet he's a huge distraction. If you're a part of that Blue Jay marketing department, you're praying this guy breaks camp, because all of a sudden it's not about, hey, Ohtani's in L.A. and Soto's in New York, and yes, we didn't really bring in much and turn over the roster, and maybe we're not going to be a great team this year, maybe we didn't improve. All of a sudden, Alek Manoah becomes the shiny toy, and I'm not sure if he sees it that way, but I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on him, because that story is something the Blue Jays are really banking on right now.
Tiger Woods made his return to the PGA Tour after ankle surgery last April. We showed you the highlights earlier in the show. One over in his opening round at the Genesis at Riviera in Los Angeles. He's barely inside the cut line. Bryan, what was your takeaway from his comeback opening round?
Listen, Jay, I love Tiger Woods. I love watching him play golf, but I think the conclusion is we need to accept Tiger Woods is now an ambassador and not a competitor, right? He's there. He's launched his new clothing line in conjunction with TaylorMade. Looks cool, looks good. He's out there hitting some bombs off the tee, but he's also hitting shanks on 18 and then blaming back spasms. He's 1 over par. He doesn't look crisp. He doesn't look like a guy that can compete. And it's a borderline medical miracle that he's even playing, Jay.
Yep.
And he's not a young man. He's into his late 40s right now. And I keep wanting to believe it, but I've stopped believing it. Now I've reached a point, and I urge other golf fans and other Tiger Woods fans to just accept it's cool to see him play 36 holes. And if he makes the cut, that's a bonus. And if somehow a miracle 4-day weekend comes together at Augusta, at the U.S. Open or whatever, it's even better if you go in without any expectations, because I think that's where we need to be. It's amazing he's playing. If it's 5 times a year, 6 times a year, no one moves the needle like he does. Not Rory, not Spieth. I think the PGA Tour needs him more than ever, which is scary because of what's going on with live golf and everything that's happening with the wedge in golf right now, in professional golf. But he just doesn't have the game. And it's unreasonable to expect a guy with a body that's so beaten down, the age that he's at, who barely plays, to show up on great courses like Riviera against great fields and actually compete. So he's an ambassador now. Enjoy it while you can, because who knows, how long it's actually going to last at this point.
Yep, I agree with you, Brian. For most guys his age, it's the Champions Tour that they're starting to look toward. You know what, Brian? Here's the thing. Harvey's has been serving Canadians for 65 years. Delicious burgers. This guy, Bryan Hayes, has been serving up hot takes since 1983. Fun fact, in 1983, the number 8 show in America was Kate and Allie. The number 10 show was Cagney and Lacey. Think about that. Brian, you're great. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Thanks, Jay.
Hot Takes is brought to you by Harvey's. Crispy chicken BLT, topped your way. It's a beautiful thing.